就终究会成功。那么接下来我们的第二位嘉宾是 Anne Greenleaf。Anne Greenleaf 现任是 ACE 的一名顾问，她曾经在美国华盛顿大学取得了政治学的博士学位。那么她今天是将要带我们走进美国政治世界的 window， 让我们见识一下现在非常火热的美国大选。她带来的题目是 The Rise of Donald Trump: How to Understand Who is Voting for Trump and Why. Now let's welcome Anne Greenleaf.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. It's quite the honor to be here. Thank you to the organizers for having me. What an inspiring talk to follow. I'm going to continue talking about politics. My window today is on the American political system, and specifically on the presidential primary that we're having right now. And I'm focusing on one candidate in particular, since I only have 18 minutes to fill you in, and that candidate is Donald J. Trump. Doubtless you've seen him in the media recently. Okay, this is a political cartoon that was published in China Daily, and it shows Donald Trump squirting milk in the face of Lady Liberty. I use this because I wanted to talk about why did I actually pick this window? Well, I picked this window because a friend of mine from Europe emailed me when Donald Trump announced his candidacy, and he asked, is this for real? Is this guy really running for president? Is he a serious candidate? And I said, no, definitely not. This guy is going nowhere, and he's going to drop out of the race shortly. Well, I was wrong. And so in part, I wanted to give this talk to understand this phenomenon myself. Here's another reason I decided to concentrate on Donald Trump and the American primaries during this talk, and that reason is this data. This is not my own data. This is data collected by a guy named Matthew Hartzell. Oh, yeah, okay. This is data collected by a guy named Matthew Hartzell, and he went on to the Chinese website Zhou.com, and he took a poll. And when he polled people, 58% of the respondents said that they would vote for the Republican Party. 42% said they would select the Democratic Party. And then when he polled them about specific candidates, about 38% of the respondents said that they would vote for Donald Trump. Now, this is a relatively small sampling. This is not representative, right? It's one website, and it was about 700 people. However, I thought that was a pretty large percentage. It was a little bit shocking to me. And here's the second part of this. He did a second poll. And this time, he showed people an infographic about where the candidates actually stood on political issues before he asked them who they would vote for. And this time, about 33% of the respondents said that they would vote for a Republican Party, and 67% said they would vote for the Democratic Party. Trump's support fell to 18%. So, what I think this shows us is that when you have more information and more data, then you can base your opinions and ideas on facts and less on impressions and rumors. Okay, so I want to try to answer the following basic questions in the next few minutes. Oh, sorry, I keep forgetting to, here we go. In the next 18 minutes. Number one, why I don't support Donald Trump, what primaries are and how party nominations work, who are Trump voters and why are they voting for him, will Trump win the Republican nomination? If he is the nominee, will he win the general election? And does Trump's candidacy mean American democracy is broken? Okay, I have to get one thing off my chest. I would be remiss if I didn't take the opportunity when speaking in public to reject Donald Trump and the policies that he embraces. I do not support him. Why don't I support him? I think Donald Trump is racist. Here's an example of why I think this. He said, quote, when Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're bringing drugs, they're bringing crime, they're bringing rapists. And some, I assume, are good people. Okay. Example number 2. I think Donald Trump is a misogynist. What is a misogynist? Someone who does not respect women. This is another quote from Trump. Quote, "Look at that face. Would anyone vote for that? Can you imagine that, the face of our next president?" The person he's talking about here was presidential hopeful Carly Fiorina, who is a very successful businesswoman and was a serious candidate for president. Why her appearance has anything to do with her qualifications is beyond me. Okay, the next reason. Oh, sorry. Donald Trump is a religious bigot. I actually think probably most of you have heard that Trump has called for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. And, moreover, Trump says crazy things about China. He said, quote, "The concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make US manufacturing non-competitive." Now, you and I live in China, and we know this is not at all true. Global warming is a scientific fact, and it was not created by or for Chinese people. Okay, moving on. Let's talk about the actual process. What are primaries? Okay. American primaries start before we're going to have what we call the, quote, general election in November. They started in January, and they will run until June of this year. So it's about a 6-month time frame. We have 2 types of ways to vote for party candidates. One of those ways is a primary, and the other one is a caucus. Okay? What's the difference? Okay, a primary is basically just voting like you do in the general election, but you're selecting from within the party that you're registered for. So if you're a Republican, you go and you get to choose amongst the Republican candidates, and if you're a Democrat, you get to go and cast your ballot for a Democratic candidate. Caucuses are slightly different. Caucuses are more informal. In a caucus, you actually go to a community landmark such as a church or school or a library, and you have to talk to your neighbors, and you try to convince them that your candidate is the best candidate. So for example, if I were a Trump supporter, which again I'm not, I would go to this place and I would try to tell my friends, well, I think Trump's foreign policy is the best foreign policy. Please come join me and be counted amongst his supporters. Okay, so what happens after all of the primaries and caucuses are done? We have national conventions, one for the Republican Party and another for the Democratic Party. These will be held in July of 2016. They're around the same time frame, but one will happen in Philadelphia and the other in Cleveland. That's how we get to the general election. Okay, so who are Trump voters? Who are these people who are supporting him? Here's the data. This is what I like as a political scientist. Trump voters are mostly men, as it turns out. You can see down here on this graph, this is Trump's unfavorability rating amongst Republican women. So this is not even counting Democrats, people who are registered to vote as Democrats. Okay, this is only amongst Republicans. And 42% of Republican women say they would not like to vote for Donald Trump. Unsurprisingly, given Trump's racist comments, most Trump voters are also white. Although a number of white voters also vote for Ted Cruz, Donald Trump seems to have attracted a lot of white, non-evangelical Christian voters. The next salient category of Trump voters are those who have lower incomes and less education. And this is really important. You can see the red bars are Republican voters overall, and the green bars are Trump voters. So you can see that this is people who have not achieved a college degree. More people who have not achieved a college degree vote for Donald Trump than the average Republican, and they also make less money. So you can see over here, this is people who make less than $75,000 per year as a household income. Okay, so I think this is an important point. Trump supporters have become Trump supporters in large part because of racial resentment and a shifting economic landscape in the United States. So what we're looking at is people who are disenfranchised, a lot of people who are unemployed and who are struggling economically. In part, they're struggling economically because they don't have a very high level of education. What this graphic shows us is the percent change in median income divided amongst men and women between 1990 and 2013. Okay, so the most important part of this graph for you guys to notice is over here on this side. These are people with no high school diploma. They did not complete high school. Okay, and you can see that this is in the negative column. Particularly for men, there was a 20% decrease in the median income for men without a high school degree between 1990 and 2013. Okay, so how does Donald Trump win support from people like this? He says things like, "I will bring back jobs from China." Now, this is false. We know this is just not going to be true. Manufacturing jobs are not going to return to the US in large numbers ever. Not that I can imagine. And certainly no economists expect that to happen. In fact, a lot of light manufacturing jobs have left China already. They've gone to places with even lower labor costs, such as Bangladesh, Vietnam, Cambodia, and Sri Lanka. Okay, the last thing I want to talk about Trump voters is this particular question that people have been asked in polls. In polls, there's a question that they ask, and this is, quote, "People like me don't have any say," true or false. Now this turns out to be the greatest predictor of Trump support. A full 86% of respondents who said yes to that question, "I feel like I don't have any say," are Trump voters. So I think one thing to keep in mind is that there's a section of the US population that has become really disengaged from the political process. They feel extremely frustrated. Okay, moving on to the next important question. Will Trump receive the Republican Party's nomination? We're still not sure. That's the answer. So what you can see here, these are the remaining Republican candidates that are still running. Trump is at the top. He has 95% of the target number of delegates that he needs to win in order to become the nominee. Cruz is only at 52% and Kasich is at 22%. So even though Trump is close to his goal, he's not there. He's a little bit behind. So he doesn't have yet the number of delegates that he needs to secure the nomination by July. So what happens if no one has a majority by the time the convention is held? Well, it seems that we may, for the first time in a long time, have what is called a brokered convention. A brokered convention happens when there aren't enough delegates for any one candidate to be declared the winner by the time the convention is held. Then a lot of brokering happens. There's negotiations at the convention itself. The candidates and party leaders and delegates have to discuss how can we find a majority in our party. Okay, wait, I've never heard of a brokered convention before. Why not? Why is it happening this year? Okay, yes and no. This used to be the way nominees were selected by political parties, but not during the past 60 years. So the last time there was a brokered convention was 1952, when Adlai Stevenson was nominated by the Democratic Party. So it's been a really long time. And it's very contentious because this gives a lot of power to party leadership rather than to voters directly. Okay, so here's another important question. If Donald Trump is a Republican nominee, will he win the general election? Now, I suspect you guys know who this woman is. This is Hillary Rodham Clinton, and she is likely to be the Democratic nominee. I could give a whole nother talk on what's happening on the Democratic side, but unfortunately I don't have time with that. So we're just going to focus on how Trump and Clinton would fare against each other. Okay, so what does the polling data say? Again, I want to go back to data and really have a look at this. Clinton versus Trump, the outlook. I think it may be hard for you guys to read all of these numbers, but the most important line is the one that's highlighted in yellow at the top. This is an average of all of the polls that are below. So what you need to see is on this side. This is the spread, this is the margin of victory by which Hillary Clinton is predicted to win over Donald Trump in a hypothetical general election. And what you can see is that she wins in every poll. The average amount by which she wins is over 10 points. So the outlook is good. It's very likely that if Trump were the nominee, that Clinton would beat him in the general election. Here's a little bit more data on that front, and a caveat, okay? While Clinton does very well in these hypothetical scenarios, the truth is a lot could happen between now and November, right? There could be a terrorist event, there could be a big economic change, we don't really know. And in fact, this is a graph that shows popularity over time, right? So what I want you guys to take away from this is that numbers change. This is not a static scenario, right? If I call you today and I ask, who do you think you'll vote for in November, you have every right to change your mind next month. Okay, so we don't really know at this stage in the campaign. It's hard to rely on these kinds of polls to make a prediction about the general election. Now here's the final part that I wanted to address in this talk. And this is a quote from the 街坊日报, right? And you guys can take a second to read it. It's implying that Trump and his candidacy are a sign that American democracy is in decline, that our society is kind of decaying, our democracy is falling apart, right? Now, I just want to say I disagree. And I disagree for several reasons. Here's the first reason I disagree. This graph is published by The Economist magazine, and it shows people who voted in the primaries thus far, and compares them to the number of non-voters. Okay, so the total of Trump voters is on the right in red, and the non-voters are the blue-green section over there. So what we find out from this is actually that more people need to participate, not less. That in fact, if everyone had been voting in the primaries and participating in the caucuses, Donald Trump may have already had to quit his campaign and withdraw. Okay, so again, the first reason I disagree is that what I think this shows is that we need to have more people participating in the democratic process, not less. The second reason I disagree with the idea that our democracy is somehow in decline is that the American system of government is built to have checks and balances. Each person in government has limited power. Now, I don't like Donald Trump, I don't support him, but if he were president, I have enough faith in our system of government that other branches, the justice system and the congressional branch, would check some of his worst ideas. Okay, the third reason I disagree is quite simply that Trump hasn't been elected to anything yet, so don't panic. Okay, that brings me to the end of my talk. Now, I've given Donald Trump a hard time, so I just want to finish by agreeing with him on one and only one point. Some time ago, he said, before he was running for president himself, that, quote, "I know Hillary Clinton, and I think she'd make a great president." And I have to agree with him on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your speech. But when you look at the majority of the audience we have today, they are Chinese people, right? So why would this audience really just care about Donald Trump or care for who is like the next president of America? Why would they actually care?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I could give a whole nother talk to answer that question, but I'll stick to two main reasons. The first reason is this. A lot of you are high school students, a lot of you from Chengdu, and you're planning on going abroad, and in 4 years, during the next presidential election, you're going to be living in the US. Now, you may not be able to vote by that time, right? 4 years isn't enough to get a green card and, apply for citizenship. However, you're going to be an influencer in your college community, right? People are going to ask you, what do you think about this? What's your opinion? So I actually think it's crucially important for people to become informed about the politics of the US before they go to study abroad there. The second point is this. Now, I just said something about checks and balances in the American political system. And while that's true, the president takes special leadership in the area of foreign policy. So I think Trump, in particular, would have a very negative effect on Sino-American relations. He has said repeatedly in the press things that have a very mercantilist tone. He says things about starting trade wars with almost everyone. And our biggest trading partner is China, right? So I think that a Trump presidency would have a very large impact on Sino-American relations and impact all of us directly.
Thank you so much for your answer. That really helped.